Take, I brought this food for you. Why are you helping me? Because I feel like it. I promised I'm gonna marry you when I'm rich.
The black Rolls-Royce pulled up outside the small diner in Detroit where Nalani worked, and every head turned. She was wiping down tables in her faded blue uniform when the door opened, and there he stood. Killian Rhodes. The boy she'd fed from her own lunch every single day 15 years ago. The boy who'd promised to marry her when he made something of himself. The boy who'd disappeared without a word and never looked back. But he wasn't a boy anymore. He was a billionaire tech mogul in a $1,000 suit, and the woman on his arm, draped in diamonds, wasn't Nalani. It was Sienna Blackwell, the daughter of old money, blonde and perfect in every way Nalani had been told she wasn't. Killian's eyes met hers across that diner, and for just a second, she saw something flicker. Regret? Recognition? Then Sienna laughed, loud and crystalline, and the moment shattered. Nalani's hands trembled as she gripped her cleaning rag. This was the man she'd loved, the man she'd sacrificed everything for, standing in her workplace like a stranger. But let me take you back to where this all began, to a middle school cafeteria in Detroit where a 13-year-old girl made a choice that would define her entire life. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My colleagues said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers. But I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show them that these tales matter. And comment where you are watching from. 15 years earlier, Nalani Jefferson was 13 years old, living with her grandmother in a small apartment on Detroit's east side. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 9, and Grandma Rose worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat. They didn't have much, but they had enough. Nalani always had lunch money, always had clean clothes, always had love. That's when she first noticed Killian Rhodes, the skinny white boy who sat alone in the cafeteria every day, staring at other kids' food with hollow eyes. His clothes were always dirty, his face always too thin, and nobody talked to him. The other kids called him trailer trash, said his mother was a drunk and his father was in prison. But Nalani saw something different. She saw hunger. The first time Nalani shared her lunch with Killian, he cried. Right there in the cafeteria, tears streaming down his dirty face as he bit into the peanut butter sandwich she'd slid across the table. Thank you, he whispered, his voice breaking. I haven't eaten since yesterday morning. Nalani's heart broke into pieces. From that day forward, she made it her mission to feed him. Every single day, she brought extra food from home. Sandwiches, fruit, chips, whatever Grandma Rose could spare. Sometimes it meant Nalani ate less at dinner, but she didn't care. Killian needed it more. They became friends, then best friends, sitting together every day at that corner table while other kids whispered and pointed. Nalani didn't care what anyone thought. She saw the brilliant mind behind those hungry eyes, the way Killian could solve math problems faster than anyone, the way he read library books like they were oxygen. You're going to be somebody important one day, she told him during lunch one autumn afternoon when they were 14. I just know it. Killian looked at her with such intensity it made her breath catch. When I am, he said seriously, I'm going to marry you, Nalani. I promise. You're the only person who ever saw me as human. She laughed, thinking he was just being sweet. But Killian didn't laugh. He meant every word. High school brought them even closer. Nalani and Killian were inseparable, and somewhere along the way, friendship bloomed into love. They were 16 when he first kissed her behind the school library, his hands shaking, whispering that she was his everything, his reason to keep fighting. Grandma Rose loved Killian like her own grandson, always making sure there was a plate for him at dinner. She saw what Nalani saw, a good boy trapped in terrible circumstances trying desperately to survive. Killian's mother had overdosed when he was 15, and he'd been bouncing between foster homes ever since. But he never gave up. He worked part-time at a gas station, studied until midnight every night, and applied for every scholarship he could find. I'm getting us out of here, he promised Nalani on her 17th birthday, holding her close on Grandma Rose's porch. I'm going to make something of myself, and then I'm marrying you. We're going to have the life we deserve. Nalani believed him with every fiber of her being. She wore the promise ring he'd bought with money from his gas station job, a simple silver band that meant more to her than diamonds. They planned their future together, imagined children and a house with a big kitchen and Sunday dinners. But then everything changed the night Killian got his acceptance letter to Stanford University with a full scholarship. The letter came in April of their senior year, and Killian was ecstatic. Stanford. Full ride. Computer science program. It was everything he'd dreamed of, his ticket out of poverty. Nalani was happy for him, even though her own college prospects were limited. Grandma Rose had gotten sick, diagnosed with diabetes and high blood pressure, and someone needed to stay home to take care of her. Nalani had accepted a job at the diner and enrolled in community college for night classes. It wasn't Stanford, but it was honest work. "I'll come back for you," Killian promised the night before he left for California, holding her face in his hands. 2 years, maybe 3. I'll get established, get a good job. And then I'm bringing you out there. We're getting married, Nalani. Nothing's going to change that." She believed him. She kissed him goodbye at the Greyhound station, watched his bus disappear into the Detroit morning, and counted the days until his return. They talked every night for the first month. Long phone calls where he described his classes and his dorm and how different everything was. But slowly, the calls became less frequent. Once a day became every other day became once a week. Nalani told herself he was just busy, that Stanford was demanding, that their love was strong enough to survive distance. But when his calls stopped completely after 6 months, she knew something was terribly wrong. Nalani tried everything to reach him. Phone calls that went to voicemail, emails that bounced back, letters sent to his dorm that were never answered. It was like Killian Rhodes had vanished from the face of the earth, or worse, like he'd erased her from his life completely. Grandma Rose held her while she cried night after night, that promise ring still on her finger, her heart shattered into pieces. "Baby, sometimes people change when they get new opportunities," Grandma Rose said gently. "Sometimes they forget where they came from and who helped them get there." But Nalani couldn't accept that. Not her Killian. Not the boy she'd fed every day, the boy who'd promised to marry her. The boy who'd said she was his everything. There had to be an explanation. Maybe he was in trouble. Maybe something had happened. She convinced herself of every possibility except the truth, that he'd simply abandoned her. Years passed slowly and painfully. Nalani worked at the diner, took care of Grandma Rose, and tried to build a life from the broken pieces. She dated occasionally but never seriously. How could she when her heart still belonged to a ghost? Then one day, 7 years after Killian left, she saw his face on the news. Killian Rhodes, tech entrepreneur, had just sold his startup for $300 million. If you're still with me, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. Let me know in the comments, do you think Killian ever really loved Nalani, or was she just convenient when he had nothing? I really want to hear your thoughts. Seeing Killian's face on that television screen, successful and smiling in an expensive suit, broke something inside Nalani that had barely been holding together. He'd made it. He'd become everything he'd promised he would. But he'd done it without her, and he'd never looked back. The news showed him at some charity gala in San Francisco, surrounded by wealthy people who'd never known hunger, never known struggle. And on his arm was a beautiful blonde woman the reporter identified as his girlfriend, Sienna Blackwell, heiress to a hotel fortune. Nalani turned off the television and cried until she had no tears left. Grandma Rose had passed away 2 years earlier, and Nalani had never felt more alone. She finally took off the promise ring that night, put it in a box in her drawer, and tried to accept that Killian Rhodes was never coming back for her. She was 25 years old, still working at the same diner, still living in the same small apartment, while the boy she'd saved was living in mansions and dating heiresses. Life wasn't fair, but Nalani had always known that. She just hadn't expected it to hurt this much. 8 more years passed. Nalani turned 33, her life a quiet routine of work and sleep and trying not to think about what could have been. Then he walked into her diner. 15 years after he'd left Detroit, Killian Rhodes returned, and he wasn't alone. Nalani recognized him immediately even though everything about him had changed. The skinny hungry boy was gone, replaced by a confident man in expensive clothes. But his eyes were the same, those blue eyes she'd once loved more than anything. Sienna Blackwell clung to his arm, looking around the diner like it might contaminate her designer dress. "Killian, darling, are you sure about this place?" she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "It looks rather unsanitary." Nalani felt her face burn with humiliation. This was her workplace, her honest living, and this woman was mocking it. But what hurt more was watching Killian say nothing in its defense. He just smiled uncomfortably and guided Sienna to a booth. Nalani's manager assigned her their table. Her hands shook as she approached with menus. "Welcome to Rosie's Diner," she said, her voice somehow steady. "Can I start you folks with some drinks?" Killian's eyes met hers, and she saw the recognition hit him like a freight train. His face went pale. "Nalani," he whispered. Sienna looked between them sharply. You know the waitress? The contempt in her voice was unmistakable. Killian opened his mouth, closed it, then said the words that would change everything. No, I don't know her. Those 4 words, I don't know her, landed like a physical blow. Nalani stood there, menus trembling in her hands, staring at the man who'd promised to marry her, the man she'd fed every day when he was starving, the man she'd loved with everything she had. And he looked her in the eye and pretended she was a stranger. Sienna smirked, satisfied. Good. I thought maybe she was one of your charity cases from your unfortunate past. She waved her hand dismissively. We'll have 2 sparkling waters. And make sure the glasses are actually clean. Nalani wanted to scream, to throw the menus in Killian's face, to tell Sienna exactly who his charity case had been. But she had bills to pay and couldn't afford to lose this job. So she swallowed her pain, nodded professionally, and walked away with what remained of her dignity. She brought their waters, took their orders, and served their food, all while Killian avoided her eyes. But she noticed his hands shaking when she set down his plate. She noticed him barely touching his food while Sienna complained about everything from the temperature to the presentation. And she noticed the way he stared at her when he thought she wasn't looking, his face filled with something that looked like regret. When they finished, Killian left a $1,000 tip on a $40 bill. Nalani stared at the money, and something inside her snapped. Nalani walked outside just as Killian and Sienna were getting into their Rolls Royce. Keep your money, she called out, her voice cutting through the parking lot. She threw the cash at him, bills scattering across the pavement. Killian froze. Sienna gasped, outraged. Excuse me, do you know who he is? But Nalani wasn't looking at Sienna. She was looking at Killian, years of pain and betrayal pouring out. I know exactly who he is. He's the boy I fed every single day when he was starving. He's the boy who promised to marry me, who said I was his everything, who swore he'd come back for me. And then he left and became someone who pretends people like me don't exist. Tears streamed down her face. But her voice never wavered. You want to throw money at me like I'm some charity case. I never wanted your money, Killian. I wanted you to remember that when you had nothing, when everyone else treated you like trash, I saw you. I loved you. And you repaid that by pretending I never existed. Killian's face was white as snow. Sienna stared at him in shock. Killian, what is she talking about? But before he could answer, Nalani turned and walked back into the diner, leaving him standing in a parking lot full of scattered $100 bills and the ghost of promises he'd broken. 3 days later, Nalani was closing up the diner when Killian walked in alone. No Rolls Royce, no Sienna, just him in jeans and a regular shirt, looking more like the boy she'd once known. I called off the engagement, he said quietly. I told Sienna everything. About you, about where I came from, about who I really am. She left me, said she couldn't be with someone from such a disgusting background. He laughed bitterly. Guess I finally showed her who I really am. Nalani kept wiping down tables. Why are you telling me this? Killian stepped closer, his voice breaking. Because I've been a coward and a fool. Because I got to Stanford and felt so ashamed of where I came from that I tried to erase it. I stopped calling because I thought you deserved better than someone who'd been foster trash. Then years passed and I was too ashamed to reach out. I convinced myself you'd moved on, found someone better. He pulled something from his pocket, her old promise ring. I kept this. Carried it everywhere, even when I was pretending to be someone else. Because no matter how far I ran, I couldn't forget the girl who saw me when I was invisible. Nalani finally looked at him, tears in her eyes. You broke my heart, Killian. I know, he whispered. And I don't deserve forgiveness. But I'm here now, if you'll let me prove I never stopped loving you. Nalani was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, you can start by helping me close up, and then we'll see. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a beginning. And sometimes, that's enough. Thank you for listening to this story. If it touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below and tell me, should Nalani give Killian another chance, or should she walk away for good? These stories remind us that kindness is never wasted, even when it's not returned the way we hope. Until next time, remember that your worth isn't determined by who remembers you, but by who you choose to be when no one's watching.